Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with singer-songwriter, author, and founder of The Rabbit Room, Andrew Peterson. Andrew will be our featured artist at our February 2026 annual meeting in Orlando, Florida. Hear from a man passionately committed to using music and writing to proclaim Christ. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, 𝘏𝘪𝘣𝘭𝘪𝘤𝘭, president of the Association for Biblical Higher Education. And today we have a very special guest. This is an episode I have really been looking forward to having. And if those of you who are part of ABHE, I've heard from you. You have requested that Andrew Peterson be one of our artists when we're together at the annual meeting. And I'm so thrilled that we finally, after 4 years, have been able to book him. And we are very much looking forward to having Andrew at our February 2026 annual meeting in Orlando. And this is the first of 5 episodes that we'll have over the next several weeks, where I will introduce you to our featured artist, Andrew, and then our other 4 plenary speakers at our conference. So, Andrew, thank you so much, 1, for agreeing to be with us, and then 2, for doing this episode.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, opening question, just so our folks can get to know you a little bit better. You've been on a journey. We've all been on a journey in our various faith journeys with Christ. And as you reflect over yours, share with us an instance that profoundly altered your direction towards Christ-likeness.
Oh, wow. So the first thing that pops into my head is my encounter with the music of 𝘮𝘮 𝘠𝘪𝘏. That was in 1994, maybe 3. Maybe it was 93. I had grown up in the church. I'm a pastor's kid, and so I had, grown up in the kind of deeply, well, as Flannery O'Connor put it, the Christ-haunted South. And so I was in the South in America, and it's now that I'm older and I have kind of traveled around a bit, I can see how easy it is to grow up in a very Christian culture without really knowing who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people. So no, I don't have any like abusive stories or anything weird like that. I grew up in a pretty legalistic, conservative Southern tradition, with no real complaints about it. I'm really thankful that I had to do sword drills at church camp and learn, memorize the books of the Bible and all that kind of stuff. But it was all disconnected from the person of Jesus, Mm-hmm. And so I was 18 or 19. I had been traveling around in a rock band, just aimless, didn't know what to do with my life, really wanted to give myself to something that had some meaning. But as far as I understood it at that time, God was just always angry with me, because I just didn't like who I was. I knew I was, I'd tried to keep the rules as well as I could, and I was incapable of it. And then one day in the middle of that season where I was kind of lost in the woods, a friend of mine asked me to learn a 𝘮𝘮𝘮 song so he could sing it in church on Sunday. And I didn't know who 𝘮𝘮𝘮 was, but something about the brokenness in Rich's voice, the imperfection of his voice, the deep gut honesty of his songwriting, and his knowledge of Scripture, his true belief in the gospel got my attention. And the way I think of it is, it's like, before I heard that 𝘮𝘮𝘮𝘮 song, I was standing on one side of a doorway. And when I heard that song, I stepped through and Jesus was standing there. Wow. And I, the biggest thing is, was realizing, that he loved me. I think I knew in theory that God loves us, but I also attached to that as long as I'm behaving.
Yeah.
And to realize that I had been skipping over the verse where Paul says, God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Mm-hmm. I missed the while we were yet sinners part. And so that set me on a journey that led me to this podcast right now, honestly.
Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
I met him a couple times. Yeah.
Okay.
Just in very awkward fanboy situations. I have huge regrets. It's funny. I had put out I was in Bible college at the time, and I had put out my first indie record in like 96 or something like that. And Rich died in 97.
Right.
So I met him right around that time. And I remember giving him and Mitch McVicker, who's the guy that he toured with at the time, giving him my CD, and Rich stuck it in his Dulcimer case. And that was that. And then Rich died the next year, fast forward 5 or 6 years. And then I, by God's grace, got to be friends with a lot of Rich's friends as I kind of found my way into music. And I asked Mitch McVicker, I was like, do you know that we met a long time ago? And he was like, yeah, in Florida. And I was like, oh no, you remember, remember that I was that nerdy kid. And I said, do you remember I gave you guys that CD of mine? Like, did you ever listen to it? And he goes, yeah, we hated it. Which I think is so funny.
That is hilarious.
It was a really bad indie record, there's not much to like about it. So I just doubled over with laughter that the one time Rich heard my music, he hated it. So I'm okay with it.
And then since then, when fans give you copies of their recordings, how do you respond to those?
Dude, honestly, that's a good question. I'm very convicted to remind myself that I was once on the other side of this. And I take it pretty seriously. I try to listen to everything everybody gives me and try to be as generous as possible.
Yeah.
But
is that a common thing in your industry? People just kind of randomly giving you things to listen to?
Yes. They still give CDs, which I don't even have a CD player at this point, but so it's kind of funny. And I usually tell people like, yeah, send me a link. I'll listen if I can. Or, people will tag me on Instagram or something. But the books is the other thing, is like, there's a lot of independently published books that people can hand you. And it's like, I barely have time to read the books that I'm on my nightstand. So I don't know how that works, but
yeah. So I have an interesting Rich Mullins connection as well. So I was in Bible college myself. I think it was 1993. So actually pretty close to then. And I don't even remember how it was back then. To have a car on campus was a big deal. Like now everybody has a car, but I had a car. So Rich Mullins needed to be picked up at the Harrisburg International Airport because he was coming in for a CD signing, I think it was, at the local Christian bookstore. And I think I knew the manager or something like that. And they're like, hey, can you swing by and get him? I'm like, sure, I can do that. So I just have this image. It was a Dodge Spirit, 1990 Dodge Spirit. I'm driving to Harrisburg International Airport. And I mean, he was a big deal in the 90s, right?
Yeah, sure.
He was top of the list. And like, how in the world did I get myself in this situation? Looking in my rear view mirror and there's Rich Mullins in the back seat. But
so funny.
Took him in and he's like, can you just do a drive by the store to see if there's a line? So I kind of sneak up, and sure enough, there's this huge line. So they're kind of trying to figure out how to approach the front door. But
that's so funny.
But he was so gracious. Like he was just such a kind man.
He really was a kind person. There's a lot of stories about him that float around because he was pretty eccentric and imperfect in many ways. But the stories about his kindness are the ones that I hear the most. There's so many little stories, moments like that you just described that I've heard about him. I had a funny thing. I got to be the food guy when he played at my Bible college. I volunteered. I was like, can I be the guy to help in any way? And they said, well, we need somebody to go take his order and go get his dinner. So I went to him and Mitch and I was like, what do you guys want to eat? And they were like, what's around here? And I was like, and there's an Outback. And they were like, great. What's at the Outback? And I was like, steak. And they were like, we'll have 2 steaks. So I actually saved the piece of paper where I wrote down his order. And I was thinking, who eats a steak right before they go on stage to sing? That's so weird to me. I would never do that. Anyway. I'm like a sponge for Rich Mullins stories. So.
Yeah. Are you, other artists that have influenced you through the years?
Yeah, a lot. I would say the ones that have probably influenced me the most are the artists in my own community. Ben Shive, who produced most of my records, one of the best songwriters in the world. Andy Gullahorn, Jill Phillips, Eric Peters, Jeremy Casella. And honestly, that's like most of what I listen to is people that I go to church with,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's funny. It's part of that's just living in Nashville, which is this remarkable
Sure.
city.
Yeah.
But I remember my kids were little and they were so used to us knowing the people we were listening to that Sting came on the radio and Papa said, "Is he nice, Papa?" Or Aiden asked me, "Is Sting nice?" And I was kind of like, "Oh, we don't know everybody that we listen to." But yeah, those guys have been like my tastemakers. And I would say too, my kids, have been really great about exposing me to like really good younger music. There's a lot of great music being made by people half my age. And it's fun to have kids who pass that along.
Yeah. And you have such a unique style too, that I think our folks are just a storytelling kind of style. And that's kind of, you've expanded, like you do singing, songwriting, but you're also writing as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I started writing books probably, 20 years ago is when I started working on book 1 of the Wing-Feather saga. And that took me about 10 years to write. So it's four book series that is now an animated TV show that I'm executive producing, which has been a blast. And so the cool thing about that is the books have taken off. And so now a lot of times at my concerts, there will be kids at the show who don't know my music at all, but they've got their beat up copy of one of the Wing-Feather books with them. And they're wondering, why is my favorite author singing about his feelings? It's really weird. But it's just delightful to meet more and more families who are reading the books. And so then I wrote a couple of memoirs. So there's one on creativity and what it's like to be a Christian who's trying to live a life of making things. And then the other one is kind of about trees and grief and the presence of God. It's called The God of the Garden.
Wow. So I'm just curious, when you're, if you were to kind of pit singing and songwriting against writing books, are you equally split 50-50 as far as what motivates you and gets you going, or do you have a preference?
Yeah. They all scratch the same itch. There's this, I love to draw and paint too. And so, I feel the same pull toward visual art as I do. I'm not nearly as good at visual art as I wish I was, but but yeah, I've just always been, curious about, different ways of expressing something beautiful. And so, but honestly, I haven't written songs in 5 years. I've been, I still love to do concerts. I tour pretty much constantly, but I just do old songs, and it's a great joy to me that I actually like playing my old songs, and I comfort myself knowing with the fact that when I go see James Taylor, I don't want to hear James Taylor's new songs. I want to hear Fire and Rain. And so I'm not at all James Taylor, and I'm not that old yet, but I do kind of still feel like there's juice in some of the old songs. I still believe these things. I've got 10 or 12 albums. And so that's 120 songs to choose from. So I can change it up regularly.
Which as a fan of listening to music, you don't want me performing by any stretch of the imagination. But for those fans of us who go to concerts, and I want all artists to hear this, we go to the concerts to hear the old songs. We don't go to concerts for you to highlight your new songs coming, because we can't sing along. I remember going to Petra concerts, right? And Stephen Curtis Chapman did a lot of his old stuff for sure. But, it was just like, no, I want to hear the clock because I want to be able to sing along with it. So in February, we're looking forward to singing along with all of your classic songs.
Thank you very much. The thing is, all the classics had to be new at some point.
That's true. That's true.
Like at some point you have to try, but I think it's a career stage thing where like, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm not writing new songs ever again, but I really do like, that's part of the joy of you asked me about influence. James Taylor is a huge influence. Paul Simon and Mark Cohn, a lot of these Americana singer-songwriters, and it's story songs. Most of it is acoustic. You can pull off the song with a piano or a guitar, and those are timeless. And so I tried my best to model my own songs after that stuff. So it means they last.
Yeah. and people resonate to stories. I think it's a reflection of being created in the image of God, is that God uses story, God uses narrative even to explain who he is and who his son is, and even the creation story and fall and redemption. It's all part of a story. So when people sing in a context of a story, or do movies or write books, that's a framework, that's a structure that we really do resonate well with. And I think when it happens in music, there's a certain depth to it that I think everyone brings their life experiences to it and to that song, and then relate to it at a totally different level than just a song, about love or something else that's a little bit more surfacey to it.
Sure.
All right. So you've been at it. So how many years would you say that you've been at this singing gig?
Well, I think I hit the road for the first time in 92.
Okay.
So I don't know what the math is on that.
So it's several years you've been at it. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going to say, yeah, I'm going to do another year. I'm going to do another tour. I'm going to hit the road again. Cause I'm sure the luster of, the road life wears off pretty quick. What keeps you motivated?
Sure. Honestly, this is what I believe to be what God has made me to do in his kingdom. Like, I don't know, there's nothing else I would rather do than, try to sow into people's imaginations a longing for the kingdom, for the new creation in the kingdom of God. And so, what a tremendous blessing that God said yes when I asked him if I could write songs about him and books about him, and try to use my gifting in that way. So yeah, I don't know. The jokey answer is, I've still got bills to pay. So it's kind of like,
true.
But I could do other things, I guess. But honestly, I'm really grateful after a long career of a lot of ups and downs. I didn't have like a one hit wonder career like early on. Like, I had a couple songs that spiked on the radio, but then for the most part, it's been fairly under the radar. It's like been like hopefully a long obedience in the same direction. And so that means that there have been years where I was like, this isn't working and I'm exhausted and we can barely pay our bills, or taxes hit and we just go, gosh, we're at zero again, and trying to keep the thing going. But then in the last few years, all our kids are married now. College is done. I'm a grandpa.
Oh, and congratulations!
Thank you. Very thankful to. But the fruit of having written the books and stuff means I can kind of just take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm not panicked like I was 20 years ago. Why am I doing this? And the answer is I'm doing it because it's true. Like, I actually just believe that Jesus is God and he loves us, and I want people to know about it. And so by his grace, I've been allowed to like, the way that I talk about my calling is that I want to tell the truth as beautifully as I can. So whether that's a fantasy novel or a TV show or concerts that I do, it all kind of fits neatly into that category. And that's just what I want to keep doing.
Yeah. Well, as an encouragement to you, to be at it for the years that you have and to stay consistent and steady with it is a testimony to God's work in your life. And, or what you do on the public stage is a reflection of who you are character wise, and in your walk with him. And it just comes through so well. And in a culture of 10-second snippets here and there, and your second or your 10 minutes of fame, and then people go away, or they make bad choices. You're a great example of somebody who's stuck with it, and your motivation clearly comes through as coming from the Lord. So I want to ask this next question, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are, because you are such a creative guy in all aspects. I've not seen any of your paintings, but I'm sure it's much better than what I can do. We're living in this AI age, right? So somebody can come up with a James Brown song and ask it to sing like you sing, right? So kind of what's your perspective on AI? Entire movies are being written, scripted out, acted, and none of it is human, right? It's in the music industry. What's your take on human creativity, particularly when you put it up against the fact that we are image bearers of God and God has created us to be creative?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the short answer is I'm horrified by all of it. I think it is profoundly wrong to use AI in that way. I'm sure God can redeem anything, right? And so I'm sure there are going to be medical breakthroughs and certain things that can happen. I don't really have a strongly formed opinion about that side of it. All I can speak to is the artistic side of it, and it's terrible. It's horrifying to me. And one of the things that I have thought for years is that when I talk to younger songwriters and the struggle it is to make a living at it, or to just make anything at all is hard. But if you're trying to make a go at a career at it, and to do it as a Christian in some ways can be even more complicated and fraught, because the church doesn't always know what to do with artists or art. And part of that is just like, well, every artist has felt that way. So you're in great company. But one of the things that I tell young songwriters is that the thing that is happening, the more important thing than the song that you are writing is the you that you are becoming while you are writing the song. Like, your song is may or may not last, for a generation or two. I do believe that in some sense, the work that we do carries over into the new creation. I don't know how that works exactly. But the point of it is not the song as much as it is becoming, refining your soul in this struggle and understanding more about the work that God does in his creation. When I started gardening, and really trying to figure out how to take good care of the land that we live on, I learned so much about the heart of God, the mind of God, but also about the way he chooses to work. Gardening is a slow, frustrating process with these bursts of bloom and joy, and there's so many things about paying attention to God's world that helped me understand God and myself and my own place in the world. And I think that that's more important than the actual, the cucumber that I may or may not eat. Right. It's this engagement with the world that is shaping us into more and more Christ-likeness, which is to say more fully human. And so that is the important thing about songwriting. And so AI wants to skip the entire most important part of the process just to get to the end result. And it's just abhorrent to me. And so I can say also that in the Wing-Feather Saga, like with the TV show that we're making, we use a lot of technology. Like, all the backgrounds are hand painted. There's a handcrafted look to what it is that we do, which is very intentional. And so it's not to say that technology is all bad. You have to, if you're making any kind of animated TV show. But we have had to have internal documents that say we will not use AI for this and this and this. Right. And so little things can be helpful, but nothing that you see on the screen in our show is going to be anything but made by a human. And I think that's an important line to draw.
Yeah, there are a couple great because our sector in higher education, every sector is being influenced by it, right? That's just reality. But higher education in writing of papers or doing research, there's certainly a convenience level that's there. And I like how you said it. And we see this, that if it's about getting a thing, producing some product, the end, and that's what's important, then I think there's places for AI. You use the medical example, right? If I have something going on, I'm less concerned about the process of, okay, what's going on and what's the best solution for this. So I think there are definitely good applications for it. But when the process is what's important, and you use AI to skip that process, you're exactly right. You have now forfeited an entire learning process that has to take place in order for us to grow and to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see where, especially with your music and the heavy emphasis on storytelling, yeah, you could probably generate a pretty good story using AI, but part of that is a reflection of who you are and your experiences coming through. And there's a void, there's an emptiness that happens when you don't have that. So I like how you emphasize that. And then the second thing that you said, which I tell our schools all the time, is have a structure in place to know when it's appropriate to use AI and when it's not. Like we talk about having policies or even having a theological framework around it. Like actually don't talk about how you can use AI or in what circumstances you can use it. Just wrestle with what does the Bible say about it? And then have some form of structure in place so that then when the opportunities or the tools come up to leverage AI, you're in a better position than just saying, well, sounds good, or that doesn't sound good. And so for, like you said, with your show, with the animation, that you're intentionally saying, we will use it in these instances and we won't use it in these instances. Great. Now go forward using it. But sure. I struggle with it, especially in this area of artistic expression, that we're losing something. And I don't know what that something will lead to ultimately. Do you have any insights?
Well, it'll lead to a bunch of people who don't know how to work for something. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's one of the things that has creeped me out. I got picked up by an Uber driver who was all geeked out about AI. He was a coding guy, and he was talking about how AI is either going to kill us all or it's going to save us. And the best way to help to make sure that AI is good and not bad is to talk to it more. I was just like sitting in the car going, oh, how much do I say right now? You're trying to figure out but ultimately he's describing an idol. He's saying this is a thing made by human hands that we should be talking to and that we're looking to either save us or destroy us. And to me, it fits the definition of idol worship perfectly. And so the older I get, the more Luddite I get. I'm looking right in front of me at my sketchbook, and I can tell you that when I am sketching trees, like I sit in my front yard sometimes, or when I'm traveling, I'll find a place and I'll sit and I'll sketch. I'm holding an actual pencil in my hand. I'm looking at something with my actual eyes. I'm putting something actual on paper. And that is more important to me than putting in a prompt and just looking at a house, right? Yeah. Or a tree. So that's we have to recover that sense of obligation to the given world. I think for the younger generation, like we have a duty to tend to work and to keep, is what it says in Genesis, to work and to keep this place that God has made. And engagement with the real world is one of the surest antidotes to the temptation to enter into the false world of technology and AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, we could do a whole nother episode on just this issue, because I really do think it's undermining a generation and their process of just even understanding who they are and grappling with what's real, because so much that comes onto their feeds is not real, and a discernment of you just become desensitized to it, and you're not actually experiencing life as God had planned. And yet there's also the benefit side, so you got to somehow live in this tension. So you'll be with us in February, and our theme is A Time to Lead, speaking about our current cultural context and environment and the need to lead with wisdom and integrity. How are you engaging with that in this particular time, AI aside? But how are you seeing what you see around us, the impact of things like AI, but beyond that, to encourage Christ followers through your music and your writing?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I can riff.
Go for it.
I mean, I don't, how do I put this? Like, I don't feel entirely comfortable being in any kind of position of leadership. but guess what? We're grown-ups now, and we got to
Yeah.
kind of do this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny. The Rabbit Room, which is a nonprofit that I started, next year will be 20 years now. And, you know, we weren't nonprofit in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just me kind of underwriting it and trying to make the thing happen. And then we reached a point where we needed to incorporate as a nonprofit. And suddenly I found myself sitting on a board, right, for the first time. And I'm having like quarterly board meetings, and we're voting and we're doing the minutes. And I was just kind of like, how did this happen? How did I find myself in this place now where I'm voting on a board? And then some, you know, you enter into some stressful seasons on a board, which you've probably been there plenty. And I suddenly remembered my dad on Tuesday night, board meeting night in our little church, and how stressed he would be when he would come home, and we would turn on Magnum PI, and I could just feel the stress coming off of him, because he was and I never understood, like, what's the big deal? What are they doing in there, you know, on the Tuesday night board meeting? So, anyway, all that to say that, like, I found myself suddenly a grown up. I didn't mean to be. I thought I could avoid all of this stuff if I was just a singer-songwriter, but it turns out we are leaders whether we like it or not. Yeah. Yeah. And my friend Steve Guthrie, who's a wonderful guy over at Belmont, he told me that as a professor, he was like, he has to remind himself constantly that even though he thinks of himself as being kind of a peer and friends with his students, that they are trembling on the inside when he walks into a room. Yeah. And you know, we're at the age where we don't think of ourselves as being old guys yet, but we kind of are to a 20-year-old. Yeah. And so I am just trying to really stay as grounded and responsible as I can in those contexts. Like, I'm beginning to realize that at our age, in certain contexts, our words land with a thud.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, I think a lot about the scripture that talks about how those who teach will be judged more harshly or whatever. That's part of built into that, I think, is that idea. So I'm very uncomfortable with it, but I'm also trying to be a big boy and step into it.
Which is, I think, exactly how Christ expects us to enter it. And I think, you know, when Christ ministered on earth, he was very intentional about, you know, being a servant to those. I mean, so much so that he took a towel and washed disciples' feet to reinforce the point that I'm here to serve. This is not about me per se. This is about the bigger mission that I'm trying to accomplish. And in his case, it was about him. But I think they were great examples of how we ought to position ourselves in leadership. And there's a difference between somebody who seeks leadership and those where leadership actually gets forced upon them. And I think that the latter is a better position for us, that leadership actually finds us versus us seeking it. So,
and a lot of times, I would just say that a lot of times it's listening to the people around you. Like when I was 30 or so, I realized that I wanted more old guys in my life. And so went out of my way to make sure I was befriending people who were 20 years older than me. And so I'm really thankful that I have. And those are the guys who not only can I call when I need to, but they're also guys who, women too, who have spoken into my life and said, hey, I think you have a gifting. It's time for you to step into this thing. Whether you like it or not, it's time to do this. So I think having a very intentional community in your local church, your family, your friend group, people who can tell you the truth in love, that's the biggest thing, I think.
Exactly. And I was going to say, I often have a leadership axiom that I share with people. And I think the same would apply with you, somebody who's more of a public figure, is the higher you go in leadership or the more public you are, the fewer truth tellers you have around you, because people for any number of different reasons are going to tell you what they think you want to hear versus, no, I really need that truth in my life. And I think that's one of the reasons why leaders deviate away, because they're just no one is in their life speaking truth. And that's I always say, I like to hear truth, just do it with a bit of grace too. So.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, listen, we've come to the end here. We have 2 minutes left. So Andrew, in that 2 minutes, we have a lot of young listeners, people who are right smack in that middle tier of leadership, where maybe they're just one tick up from, or they're growing, seeking some leadership position. What's one final word of encouragement that you'd like to leave with those who are leading in biblical and Christian higher education?
Oh man. read your Bible, go to church. Those are two of the obvious things that that sound really Sunday school answer, but like the older I get, the more important they become to me. They have become to me. But honestly, like pay close attention to the people in your life, like your spouse, first of all, but then also make sure that you've got a group of people in your life who, like you said, can tell you the truth in love. I have a good friend who told me that he on purpose didn't listen to a note of my music for like years. We went to church together. We were friends. We would hang out a lot. And then one day he was like, I've never listened to one of your albums. I was like, really? And he goes, I wanted to be friends with you enough to where I could tell you I didn't like it if I didn't like it. And he said, I finally listened to it and I was like pleasantly surprised. It wasn't too bad. And man, what a comfort to know that I'm friends with this person who loves me for who I am as a neighbor, not as a public figure or whatever. So the more friends like that you can have in your life, the better.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And we are really looking forward to having you in Orlando in just a few months.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And if you'd like more information about Andrew and the various ministries that he's involved with, his writing, his songs, we will definitely put a link in the show description. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.
The Biblical Higher Ed Talk podcast is proud to be a part of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast Network. Discover even more conversations, resources, and tools to help you grow your institution at thehigheredmarketer.com, your go-to community for all things higher ed marketing and leadership.